Jolly blind, and Mr. Errol's a good friend. He's never a...
Friends and neighbors, I had to do just a little bit of a fade out on our good friend Adam Carroll there. Otherwise, I was going to take up too much of the show. And we got a lot to get to today. Those who don't know, this is 20 Question Tuesdays, and I am Jeff Plankenhorn. If this is your first time tuning into one of these, basically the long and the short is this. One day early on during the pandemic, I flipped on my camera and started doing a little workshop and started taking questions randomly on a Tuesday afternoon. All sorts of people showed up. Musicians showed up. Writers showed up. Producers showed up. Managers showed up. Everybody started asking fun questions, and we had a hoot. Also, some of the best questions came from people who didn't do anything musically or just, were really, really big fans and stuff like that. Well, Sheila Steele over at Austin Music TV said, would you like to put this on the television station here in Austin? I said, that's great. I got myself a fancy app so I could go to all these multiple platforms. So big thanks to Austin Music TV for putting us on the television. And that's how it got started. And I have a little button right beneath my screen that has a plus sign with a person. And I just thought it would be much more interesting every week if I had guests. So it started out, I think I had Michael O'Connor, and then I had Jamie Harris, and then I had Ray Wiley and Ruthie and Bill Kirchen, and it's just been this wonderful, wonderful thing for me to stay connected. And now that we're all getting back to normal, I'm not going to stop. I may slow down on the live streams, but doing this every week has just been a real joy for me, and today is no different. Let's see, any housekeeping? For those who have been looking for a house concert from me while I am in Texas, I have 2 dates left to fill during my August tour. I think it's Thursday, August 12th, and the 13th. I'm trying not to do too much in Austin, so just send me a message if you're interested in doing something like that. I've got great gigs at the Saxon Pub, Green Hall, San Marcos, and Summer in the Park, and I really don't want to mess with those. So, but I am already doing one house concert in Austin. So go ahead and message me if you're interested in that. Thanks for everybody who showed up to my live stream last night. It was a super, super fun one. I do that every week as well, at least right now. We already have tons and tons of questions, so I'm going to go as fast as I can into this. This week's guest is just really needs no introduction, and I think I've gotten more questions this week beforehand, so thank you, everybody, for not making me write all of these questions frantically when the show started. That's going to make things a lot easier. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Lloyd Maines, everybody.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going, man?
Man, it's going great, and you sound and look great. Everything is working. We had a successful sound check, which is not always the case.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I have to apologize that my cell phone is the only thing that I can really make work. My desktop computer came over with a Mayflower, so the camera doesn't work. The only thing I can use it for is for emails, and luckily for transferring files for when I overdub here. But anyway, and I don't have a tripod, so I'm going to try to hold this as
steady as
still
possible.
as I can. Yeah.
Well, it's all about the conversation, and that's what this whole thing is about. And hardly ever, is it anything but talking. We may play a little video depending on what we talk about in the middle. I'm kind of psyched about playing that, but we'll get to that in a minute.
All right.
If it's okay with you, I love jumping into the questions because this is all about
Dive
people
in.
who send me the questions, and I really, really, really dig it. So I'm going to start with one that's what I kind of think is kind of a softball, and I love this question. So for those of us who are in the studio often, if you could pick one tip or trick to share with a band going into the studio, what would it be?
Well, if it's something that I'm producing,
Sure.
I just try to not have a preconception. I mean, I'll do a little bit of pre-production if someone sends me the song ahead of time. I'll kind of do some pre-production in my head, and depending on if it's a new artist that I haven't worked with, sometimes I'll actually do some pre-production like with the artist. But most of the time I just go in because I promise you, most of the time, and you know this, once you get into the studio and you get into the the midst of the production and playing the song and hearing just hearing it go down live, things change. You know, like some idea that I might have had beforehand may go out the window because I realize, wait a minute, you know, this needs to go another direction. Or so I just try not to have any preconception. Now, if it's someone that I haven't worked with before, I'll you know, and say if they're a guitar player, I'll always stress that they need to have new strings, or at least reasonably new strings.
Yeah.
They need to have a tuner handy because you know, my three. I mean, people ask me what my production approach is. You know, and I've only got three hard rules, and that's in tune, in time, and under budget. And
I like the third one.
So yeah, you know, because I mean, I've worked with so many producers over the years that after I get in there, and it's usually someone that I've never worked with. But if I'm hired on a session, sometimes I feel like maybe we're not using the time as efficiently as I think we could, but I'm not producing it. Anyway, I just like to not waste an artist's money. I mean, most of the artists that I've worked with have been very low budget. I mean, I've been lucky enough to do some high budget stuff too. But you know, just like hearing Adam Carroll's record on your little pre-show.
Yeah.
You know, all those songs brought back so many, like a memory rush to me, because I hadn't heard those songs in so long. And wow, that Terry Hendricks song, the jazz thing.
Oh yeah, and that great dobro solo you did on there.
Oh, thanks so much. I tell you,
what, man, that's so great.
Thanks. I'm really proud of that production because I'm not really known as a jazz guy, you know, and I don't play jazz, but I understand it. I have a passion for it, especially great players. In fact, on that record, all the horns were done by John Mills, who is amazing. The piano, that amazing piano, was Riley Osborne. Rest his soul.
Oh yeah.
He passed away last year. But Riley was just an amazing guy to have on a session because he made everything sound better.
Yeah.
So anyway,
and that's what you want, right?
Oh, totally.
I think what you're stressing to people is really, really good, and there's a balance between pre-production and going in and actually knowing what you're going to do as far as like knowing the song, but just being really, really open to all that going out the window when something, you know, not to sound corny, but it is kind of magical, especially when you're coming into the studio with a band for one of your first times, or with somebody you haven't worked with, or in a new studio. There's a little bit of a vibe and a little of magic to it, and you don't want to mess with that. You want that to be there, because you're right too that I was joking on my live stream last night that the days of like renting a villa in France and spending a month making a record, even the majors don't do that anymore.
No,
we can't do it.
Those days are over unless you've got a big trust fund that you can dig into. But you know, and also another fact about making a record is that the record is no better than your weakest link on the session. So you because I've you know, over the years, I mean, I don't know if you read this on my bio, but I've produced, either played on or produced, and I know this sounds like a made up. This sounds like fake news, but it's really true. I've either played on or produced between 4,000 and 5,000 projects. I mean, but I've been doing it for 45 years, so maybe that's just a good average.
No, I'd say it's pretty stellar. And I think what's also probably stellar, if you don't mind, sorry, the Zoom thing or whatever we're on here always makes me interrupt. But I think the other thing is the quality of the work that you've done over those years is also pretty stellar, as well as the quantity. And
thanks. You know,
I'm sorry. Actually, if you could take just those four people that we started with, take the four people that we decided we would put in. I didn't have time to put the Maines Brothers tune in, and I had to cut off Adams just a little bit.
Right,
but we had Terry Hendricks, Terry Allen, Mr. Joe Ely, of course, and Adam Carroll. And I mean, very, very different styles of music, very, very different artists, all stellar, and over a really, really broad span of time.
I've been really lucky to work with great songwriters, great artists. And what I was going to say is that I don't care what the budget is, whether it's a low end budget or whether it's when I produced the Chicks, the album Home, and we had a budget of 200 grand, which I only spent. We only spent about 90. Because we just didn't waste time. I've been on a lot of Nashville sessions where the catering bill was more than most of my budgets that I work with, in Texas.
Exactly right. It's kind of crazy. Now, was Home done over at Cedar Creek?
Yeah. We did the music. We did all the tracking at Cedar Creek in Austin, but then I mixed it in Nashville with Gary Pachosa, and.
Yeah, it turned out record so much, man.
Turned out great, and it's and it's still got life out there. I mean, it still definitely has wings. And
absolutely.
What I was going to say is, no matter what the budget is, whether it's low or I treat every record as if it's my project. And of course, at the end, the artist has a final say on decisions. But I never just toss anything out because it's not a big budget. I value everybody's art, and I try to treat it as my own.
Well, and we don't know too. We don't know, Lloyd, as well, because when I was just moving to Texas, I went on here's a couple of humble brag name drops, but it works because it's with Ray. Ray Wiley and I were playing a house concert in Columbia, South Carolina, to 20 people, and Ruthie Foster was opening. You don't know. You just don't know, what's going to happen with these people down the road. And so treating them all with the respect that you do, we know that comes back,
Oh, yeah.
Tenfold. Well, here's a bunch of other great questions. We've got a lot of people who want to hear, stories. So... I know that's a tough one because it's like, what story do you choose? But I'll pepper these in with some of the other questions as we're going along. Larry King says he wants to hear your favorite Jerry Jeff story. Do you have something anecdotal you'd like to spit out? I remember Ray's story was great, and so was Bob's.
I've got so many. I was lucky enough to. I knew Jerry Jeff since the mid '70s when I came down here to Austin with Joe Ely. Jerry Jeff was a big Joe Ely fan, so he came to a lot of our shows, and was always very friendly. But and actually, Jerry Jeff had a lot to do with getting Joe Ely on MCA Records. Only by word of mouth, because in the '70s, Jerry Jeff was on MCA. Mm-hmm. And so I've got this, I guess my first time that I ever laid eyes on Jerry Jeff, we were doing a show in Lubbock at a place called the Cotton Club. Oh, yeah. I'm sure you've heard of the Cotton Club. Listen, Elvis played there, Bob Wills played there, Tommy Dorsey played there, Jimmy Dorsey. Yeah. Anyway, it was a great venue. It was owned by Tommy Hancock. And so when MCA was thinking about signing Joe, they wanted to come hear the band. And so that, they picked a night at the Cotton Club. We thought that would be the best way for them to hear us. Well, for some reason, Jerry Jeff came to that show, and it's the first time I'd ever seen him. Yeah. And I saw this guy. I was on stage playing with Joe, and I saw this guy enter the front door, and he was holding. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a vintage Martin double O or triple O, like made in the 40s, 30s or 40s, a really expensive guitar. And this guy didn't have it in a case; he had it in his right hand, and he just made a beeline from the front door to the stage. Just ran as fast as he could, and came up on just exploded onto the stage, and it was Jerry Jeff. And I remember he had a tambourine around his neck. A tambourine around his neck. I was sitting there playing steel thinking, wow, how did he get that tambourine around his neck? Yeah. And then in the same moment, I was thinking, wow, how is he going to get it off? Because, so anyway, Jerry Jeff got up on stage with us, and I don't think he even knew the song, but whatever song we were playing, he just, not plugged in or anything, just started banging the guitar and just joined in. I mean, I knew right then that he was a special individual, and
Yeah.
I've got so many great stories. I mean, he and Susan always treated me great. Uh, I actually started working with him in 1988 when he did Live at Green Hall.
Right.
He called and just said, "Hey, I'm putting a new band together," because he took some time off to kind of get in shape, get healthy. And so in '88, he called and said, "Hey, I'm putting a band together for a live record at Green Hall," and he said, "I want you to be a part of it." So that kind of started my work with Jerry Jeff, and I produced. I played so many live gigs with him, and produced a lot of records. I lost count. I think around 7 or 8 records on him, and it was a great experience. And one time we were playing Billy Bob's, and of course he always sold out Billy Bob's. It was always a great gig. And after about our third encore at the end of the night, because Jerry Jeff owned the crowd. I mean, he could ring a crowd
He
out.
commands. Yeah,
He was in total control of the crowd. And so we were backstage, and they were still doing the encore thing. And and I mean, I just said to Jerry Jeff, I said, "Jerry Jeff, man, you're an amazing band leader." He said, "Well, I have to be the leader. I can't follow." which is true. I mean,
it's true, and it's also a great anecdote.
Yeah.
When a few years back, before he passed, when Ray Wiley was doing his birthday show at the Paramount, I'm kind of off stage, and Ray's got me coming up to sing one of Ray's tunes with him, and then Ray pulls me up on stage, and we sing a song, and all of a sudden I see Judy over in the side wings going, "Oh, Jerry Jeff's here," and I was like, "Oh, cool." So he blazes in from the back in the middle of the set, and Ray kind of catches that he's there, finishes whatever song we're in the middle of, and Jerry Jeff comes out on stage, and we hand him a guitar, and he says, Ray, he says, "What do you want to do?" And Ray says, "Well, why don't we do that song that we did from years ago, that Roy Smeck guitar song?" And he goes, "Oh, man, that's great. And Ray politely looks at Jerry Jeff and goes, "Hey, what key do you want to do it in?" And Jerry looks at him. He goes, "I don't give a shit."
Exactly.
And we just plays right into the tune, and I just it's so funny and so great, and so at one moment he's so personable and all that stuff, but at the same time, there's no nonsense. Hey man, let's get into it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he was a true talent, and a really soulful guy.
Well, those songs, man, we get a lot of the fun, and we get a lot of the getting by kind of fun and stuff. But I mean, you can't tell me that Little Bird is not a timeless, brilliant song. I know the level of songwriting was always there too.
Yeah, and also, in fact, I don't know if you know, but on Saturday, June 5th, I played a memorial show at Lukenbach with Jerry Jeff, and they had me put the band together. It was we backed up Rodney Crowell, Emmylou Harris, Jimmy Buffett, Ramblin' Jack Elliott. Oh man, who else is Jeff Hanna with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. I can't remember everybody right now, but everybody there agreed.
Yeah.
Steve Earle. Steve Earle was there too, and he was fantastic. But everybody agreed that no matter if it was Jerry Jeff's song that he had written or a cover song from someone else, he owned that song. Yeah. He owned that song and pretty much did the definitive version of that song. And I totally agree with that, because it was he was very, very picky on what songs he liked. And so when he picked a song, he made it better. He made it his. And I always admire that from him.
Man, I always did too, and I love hearing about it, and I love that the music's staying alive, and I love that all those people are continuing to keep it going.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just like, hey, we do this thing when somebody passes, which you see a lot, and then we forget about him. He's enduring for sure. I got a great question to take a little bit of a tangent here, and this might lead into something cool. So, like, while I'm saying it, I'm gonna pull up something So I can't do 10 things at once. I'm not very good at that, Lloyd, but I'm going to pull something up here. And this question's
All
going
right.
to lead right into it. And that is there, who was the first person, and I think I remember the answer to this because I asked you about this one time a long time ago, so don't worry if it was just in passing, like backstage someplace at like Kerrville or something. Who was the first person who got you started on a lifetime of pedal steel magic? Thank you. That's Susan from KPFT, by the way. Station
Oh,
we
yeah,
love.
Susan Darrow.
Yeah.
Wow, great music people there.
I know, man.
Well, there was a guy named Frank Carter, and actually Frank is still living in he lives in Arizona now, in Phoenix. But he was a steel player in my dad's band. They called them the Maines Brothers, and then my brothers and they called us the Little Maines Brothers. In fact, I was thinking I might have an opportunity to show this. Hang on one second.
Oh, please. We'd love to see it.
This is a picture that I've had hanging up in my studio of my dad's band.
I'm gonna make you full screen. I'm gonna make you full screen and take off the caption so everybody can see this, and then I'll come back in just a second. Here we go.
Okay. Is that full screen?
That didn't work at all. Here, hold on a second. Let me make this.
Actually, I think it's bigger. I think it shows more of it here.
Okay, here, hold on. Let me try.
I think it's smaller.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, that's good. Anyway, my dad, if you're looking at it, let's see. Well, from the way I'm holding it, my dad is, okay, Frank Carter is right there on the end, kind of the skinny guy with a black, good-looking tie. Yeah. And then the next one is a fiddle player named Curly Lawler, who I learned Curly Lawler. He's passed away now, but I learned so much musical approach from him. He was such a great guy. I wish I could get this closer. And then the next one is my uncle's son. They called him Sonny. He was a great singer and could yodel his ass off.
Man,
he was great. And then my dad's right there with his hands on his hips. Mm-hmm. He played acoustic guitar. And then that's Port Shop Braddock from Post, Texas, the drummer. And the bass player was Fernie Reed. But anyway, this guy right there, Frank Carter.
Yeah.
Right there. Built a homemade steel. I mean, he was a real inventive guy and just a great steel player. But he built a steel using Showbud pickups. Showbud was a real popular brand back in those days. But he kind of got off track on it, and he just kind of didn't finish it. He didn't finish it out, but he did make it where it was playable. So he decided that he was going to give me that steel just as a surprise. So I came home one day from football practice. I played football in high school. Came home after football practice one day, and that steel was setting up in our living room. And I had never sat down to a steel at all, but I could play guitar somewhat. And as you know, pedal steel, the E9th neck is tuned in an open E. So I sat down to it, and it kind of all made sense to me, sort of. And I just taught myself. I mean, there were no teachers in Lubbock at all back then, and of course there was no online lessons like you've got now.
No, it wasn't like that, right?
So yeah. So I just kind of started making my own way on it, and another friend of mine named Bob Stuffelbeam, who actually built steel. I think he's the one that taught Frank to build the steel. Yeah. He I would go to him, and I would just kind of watch him. I mean, he didn't actually give me a lesson, but I would watch how he was playing, and also I started really watching really closely how Frank played. Yeah. And so I pretty much learned everything that I learned either from out of my noggin or just by watching great players. Willie Nelson used to come to the Cotton Club and play back when Willie had a crew cut and was wearing leisure suits, and he had a steel player named Jimmy Day.
Yeah, that's my favorite, right?
And I would go out and sit on the edge of the stage. We were underage, Uh, but this is when I got the steel when I was around 17. And I would go out there and sit on the edge of the stage and watch every move that Jimmy Day made. And so I learned a lot just from watching him, and from, there were so many great players back then, and still are. But I learned everything I learned from watching people, watching great players play.
Yeah, Jimmy Day was always one that was just kind of the tone freaked me out. It was just such a beautiful thing. I've had many a conversation with Kimmy Rhodes about Jimmy Day as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
for sure, for sure, for sure. It's so cool. Well, I want to take this little tangent, and there's a video that you sent, and I just want to play it right now. And while we're playing this, everybody, I want you to know, thanks for tuning in to 20 Question Tuesdays. We're here on Austin Music TV, also AustinCityJams.com, and all the other stuff. This is Lloyd Maines, and I'm just gonna play a short little 1-minute video of something really beautiful that you shared with me, and I really want to share it with the people.
If I can say
Please,
something about the video.
please.
Yeah. This was from about a year ago. Lubbock, Texas had a 4th of July festival, and of course it was all virtual since it was right in the middle of the pandemic. So they asked if I would send a video that they could use in their virtual festival. So I just decided to do something patriotic. I had never played this song, but I kind of worked it out before the video, and then I got my wife to video me. And I thought it turned out pretty good. And then at the end of the video, she pans over. I mean, I think I'm doing all great, She pans over and she pans to our dog. We have a dog that weighs 120 pounds. His name is Jake. He's half Rhodesia Ridgeback and half Great Pyrenees. So at the end, Jake steals my glory. You'll see what I mean.
That's perfect, because we're often a lot of dog people on this show, myself included. Without further ado, here's a little bit of Lloyd, everybody. 1 sec. It's so great,
Yeah.
everybody. I want you to think, just so you know, I have Lloyd's website right here, lloydmaines.com. And, one of the things that you and I both have done during the pandemic, and I'm sure, I mean, I can't believe how much remote recording we're doing now. And how incredibly awesome it is to have people, send tracks to us and say, hey, I could really use this or that. And so don't be afraid to ask. And if you want to get the great Lloyd Maines to play on something, you never know. Send him an email. Hit the lloydmaines.com there. The email's on your website, and they could talk to you about potentially doing that and other stuff. It's just, it's been a godsend for me.
I consider myself extremely lucky, extremely fortunate. In fact, I'll share. I might have told you this, but I mean, I didn't. I've been doing overdubbing at home for years and years, but not at this magnitude. Because, like, once the pandemic started, I thought, well, everything's going to come to a screeching halt, But people just kept making music, and between March 2020, first of March 2020 until now. I've done over 170 songs. I've overdubbed either steel or dobro, or in fact, Joe Ely gave me 15 songs by the old songs by the Flatlanders. And in fact, that record is just now coming out. But like it was outtakes from old records. And he asked me. He said, "See if you can turn this into an album." So I had to, add quite a bit to it, take a little bit of it away, because like some of it had electronic drums. So I put Pat Mansky put real drums on. So that's just an example of how I was able to spend my time in quarantine, in shelter at home. As I was lucky enough to keep making music, and I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, that goes right to our friend Robert Borowicz. Was like, his question was, how was working, if at all, during COVID, and favorite musician worked with, and then he puts, here's where you say your daughter. But haha. But I think I think those are two different questions. They're just not separated because of the way I wrote them. So then, how is working, if at all, during COVID? You've kind of answered that, but I also know that you've been doing a lot of stuff with Terry from Willowy Farms and doing the live stream thing.
Yeah, we were able to do live streams. Terry was very careful. She sheltered at home. Followed all the guidelines, as did my wife and I. We were very careful, so we felt safe about each other, and so we were able to do live streams, which were a lot of fun. We were able to stay connected with our fans,
and you're continuing a bit too, right? You're continuing to do them once in a while, of course.
We've kind of trimmed it down to one a month,
yes, sir.
one show a month, which is I think that's kind of the magic number there, because you can wear people out if you do too many. And what was the other half of that question? Was it
Well, the other half was kind of one of those broad questions, and I appreciate these questions. For some reason, I thought they were two because of the way I wrote them, or one because I wrote them down. But it's a separate question. That separate question is favorite musician you worked with. I don't know how any of us could pick a favorite, but you could go.
Actually, it's easy for me.
Oh yeah,
easier for me. Although I have to kind of answer it like my four favorite.
Okay, great.
If I could do it like in fours,
I like
that
it.
would be my grandkids. Which yeah. See, that's an easy one. And I'm going to show you this picture. I'm going to show you my favorite picture.
I love it.
I've got a bunch of. This is my grandkid wall here, but my favorite one was taken by my daughter Kim, and the reason that I say my grandkids is because they're all musicians. They're all really, really good musicians. And even from the time they were little kids, we had a band. When my first grandson was born, Natalie said, "Well, what do you want to be called? What do you want Slade to call you?" And I said, I was just kidding around. I said, "I just have him call me Bubba." Which that was a joke, because I've always hated that term. The whole.
Well, it's derogatory, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So
can be.
So anyway, I should have never said it, because that's what it is. All my grandkids call me Bubba, and so now I like it. But anyway, we had a band called Bubba's Buddies. From the time they were really small kids, and we would just mess around in the studio, and I did a lot of recording on them. I've got these priceless recordings from when they were like 4 or 5 years old. Anyway, here's my favorite picture, if I can get it to where you can see it. My daughter Kim, every Christmas, my wife and I send out a Christmas card of the grandkids. So
right
here
in the air, is one of them jumping a little bit? And
man, I'll tell you,
there we go. Yeah.
No, they are jumping. They're all four jumping, and my wife, my daughter told them to all just jump up as high as you can jump.
Yeah.
And do it about 20 times until we get one. So right here on this side is Declan. He's so tall, he looks like he's barely off the ground.
Yeah.
Declan, and that's Beckett right there.
Yeah.
I don't know and this is Amelia is my granddaughter. She's right there.
Yeah.
But the most amazing jump was right here. I don't know if you can see. Slade jumped up and
Cross legs.
he did a lotus position right there in midair. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. In fact, when we sent the Christmas card out, people thought that it was photoshopped.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are my favorite to work with.
Oh man,
And
I love
and then
that
and then there's a whole lot of people that run a close second.
Well, I'll tell you, what's great about that is so is that fourth generation, or do you have any more before your pops?
Let's
were
see.
Musicians in the family.
Well, let's see. My
It's
dad,
quite a
my
legacy of
uncles,
music.
my dad and uncles, and then my grandfather. Oh God, I can't think of the name of the group. He's actually sung in a pretty famous gospel group from East Texas, and I can't think of the name of the group.
So
right
we
now.
got five.
I should.
That's fifth generation then, at least.
Yeah.
Of music in the Maines family.
Let's see. I think it would be one, two. I think maybe four, because it might be my grandfather, my father, and then my brothers and myself, and then. Oh, wait a minute! No, you're right. You're right, Natalie. Yeah, you're right. It's five. Jeez, time flies.
That's pretty fantastic, man. That's pretty beautiful, and we can all see why, man. I hope I don't sound cheesy saying that because I mean it. Okay, I'm gonna take another tangent right here. That's a super fun one. I have somebody who regulars the show, who's on the show regularly, named Doug Ryan, and he kind of likes asking everybody this question, and I like getting their answer, and it's a good question. He wants to know, what is your most important spiritual principle?
Spiritual principle. Well, okay. I was going to say being on time, but
that's not bad, man. If you're, what's that? I always like if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
Yeah. I've always advocated, no matter what your job, if you have an appointment, whether it's an appointment with your doctor or a studio date or a gig, a sound check, be on time. And I tell you, Tommy Hancock, the rest of his soul, he passed away a year and a half ago. But I heard him say one time, because I think that he was in a band where one of the players was always late. And Tommy was a really calm guy, but he told this guy, he said, when you're late, you're not only infringing on your time, you're infringing on everybody's time, and time is your most valuable asset. So I think maybe that is kind of spiritual. Also, and I think, because I consider myself a decent musician. There's a lot of way better players out there, but I've always I think part of why people continued coming back to me, because I've got so many repeat artists that I work with that just Wayne the Train Hancock. I produced all 10 of his records. I produced so many records on so many people, and I think part of why they come back is they know that when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. When I say I'm going to complete something, I complete it. I guess my spiritual thing would be just try to treat people like I want to be treated. Yeah. And that always works.
Ain't nothing wrong with a little golden rule, and there's nothing wrong with being impeccable with your word as well, which is doing what you say you're going to do, and
right.
It's a big. We got a comment from our friend Larry King. He says Jimmy Dean fired Roy Clark for being chronically late. Larry, I did not know that, and that's worth putting up right there, because there you go, somebody like Roy Clark getting fired.
Well, there you go. See, and the connection there is Jimmy Dean was from Plainview, Texas, which is 40 miles from Lubbock.
Yeah. I've always, I hasten to get into the questions that I want to ask on these shows, because a lot of times the questions from the audience are so much better. But just if we could take a small tangent with the mythology of Lubbock, being someone who's not from and playing with, spending the time on the road that I did with Joe Ely, and really kind of just peering into this flatland, in a grid town, reading Radio Dreams by Gracie and Kimmy Rhodes and Reverb by Joe, and then hanging out with the Flatlanders, and then thinking about everybody from Roy Orbison to Buddy Holly and on down the line. What is your take, real quick? I mean, there's no real quick actually here on this kind of a question, but it just created so much art and continues to.
Yeah. I think it's because there was nothing else to do. I mean,
That's what I hear a lot.
Lubbock has great people. One thing people always agree is that Lubbock has totally friendly people.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to tell people that like if you're in another state, and like if say a lady with a carload of kids had a flat tire on the Pennsylvania Turnpike before cell phones, somebody would call AAA, or someone would call someone to come help. And in West Texas and in Lubbock, if that same scenario happened, somebody would pull over and just fix the flat for you.
Done.
Someone would come over and go get you a gallon of gas if you run out of gas. It's like it's all about the people. But I think that one reason that and Joe, Terry Allen, all these people will agree. Waylon Jennings was from Littlefield, which is right there near Lubbock. There's really nothing else to do there. You had sports. When you're growing up, you could play football, basketball, or play music.
Or get in a band.
And luckily, I was lucky enough to be able to do both and not wind up with bad knees or bad joints.
Right.
But if you were gonna, you had to create your own entertainment, and so I think people did it with learning to play guitar. There were so many great little garage bands. Most of them were rock and roll bands. There weren't that many young country bands. My brothers and I pretty much had the market cornered on that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were playing clubs, VFW halls, rodeo dances when I was 14 years old, and I was the oldest. I mean, I was 14. My brother just under me was 12. The bass player, my brother Kenny, was 11. I mean, my dad would load.
There was a break in that. I'm sorry to interrupt. There was a break in that too, where the country bands. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think I've heard this. The rock bands would play the clubs like the Cotton Club, and then the country bands would play like the VFW halls and places like that. There was kind of a break for a time.
Right. Well, actually, the VFWs were when we were really young. But the Cotton Club, every genre of music played the Cotton Club. Rock, big band,
It was hard for Joe to get through a gig without someone either in the audience or Joe telling a story. We would mention he would mention the Cotton Club a lot.
Oh yeah.
Because, whether it was a certain song or Eddie Beethoven or whatever it was would get thrown into something about writing, or this is where we did this, or this is where I met this person. It was a big deal.
Oh yeah. The Cotton Club was a really great venue. It was BYOB, so people loved being able to bring their coolers, and usually it was pretty peaceful, and Tommy Hancock owned it.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a guy that wore a cowboy hat with an Indian feather stuck in the back of it. I mean, he was such a. We talk about a spiritual guy. He was a really, really spiritual guy, really good feeling. So he kind of helped to merge the whole cowboys and hippies together,
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Willie Nelson came along and really did that for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I love it. Tommy Mack, our buddy, says, "Tell Lloyd I've got a leak in the sink." I'm not sure what that means.
Got a leak in the sink.
I
have no idea.
I'm sorry, Tommy. We don't know what that one means. But I did tell him. But Tommy, good to see you here, man. Well, Clue Norwood was asking a little bit about. We keep getting into these questions without even asking them. he said would love to know what it was like to work with Joe Ely early days in Lubbock. What was the scene like? Any Clash stories? I don't know. Did you have a run-ins with the Clash with Joe?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah. Well, the way I started with Joe was in about 1973. Joe was wanting to move to Austin. I mean, he was
Right.
living in Lubbock. The Flatlanders adventure was pretty short lived. I mean, they did one record. They did some demos, which later turned into a record. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It was their early demos, which I actually was able to find that tape, and so they put it out. But anyway,
Wasn't that Triphonic too? It was from the place where
it was a three track recorder.
It was a Triphonic in the same studio where in the year 20 something else was recorded. That
something like that.
Wonder thing.
I can't remember.
Anyway,
but
sorry about that. Yeah.
But in '73, Joe was just trying to raise enough money to leave Lubbock and move to Austin. So he called me and he said. He said, "Hey, I'm going to play a place called." And the way I knew Joe was from seeing the Flatlanders a couple of times, and then I used to hire Joe to come in the studio there in Lubbock and play harmonica on gospel records, because
nice.
I produced a lot of gospel stuff, like country gospel.
Yeah.
And if I ever needed a harmonica, I'd bring Joe in, and he could make a few bucks.
Yeah,
Anyway, he was trying to make enough money to leave town, and so he said, "I'm going to play the Main Street Saloon this Friday and Saturday." And he said, "We're not going to have a drummer. It's going to be me on steel, a guy named Rick Hewlett on guitar, Greg Wright on bass, and Joe." That's all it was.
Yeah.
And he said, and I said, "We're going to have any rehearsal?" He said, "No, I don't have time to rehearse." So anyway, we did a few songs that Joe wrote. We did a few songs that Butch Hancock wrote. Right. Jimmy Gilmore wrote some, and then we just did a bunch of covers. Hank Williams, Jimmy Rogers, Bob Wills, we did a lot of that stuff. And these gigs turned out to be so dynamic and so popular. I mean, it was amazing the amount of people that showed up, and they were mainly kind of your back in those days, kind of the hippie crowd.
Sure.
So I remember we made $50 a piece per night. And so Joe said, "Man," he said, "this is so good." He said, "Can we do it one more weekend?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'm there." And so the next weekend, and it was right there by Texas Tech, right on Main Street, and kind of between Main and Broadway, Main Street Saloon. Mm-hmm. The next week, there was a line that stretched all the way down University Avenue. People trying to get into this club to see us play. And I mean, our minds were blown. Couldn't believe that we had hit this nerve. So Joe said, after the next Friday and Saturday, we made a lot more money too. Yeah. Joe said, "Man, I'm just going to stay around here for a while, see how long this lasts." So that was the beginning of the Joe Ely Band. And then later on, we did some demos at Caldwell Studios, and Jerry Jeff got them to MCA Records.
Yep.
And the rest is Joe Ely history. I mean, we toured with the Rolling Stones. We toured with Linda Ronstadt. We toured with the Clash. And we were doing an in-store record party kind of thing in San Francisco for one of Joe's records. I think it was Honky Tonk Masquerade, or it might have been the one called Down on the Drag, the one we recorded in Seattle.
I love that song.
So we were doing this in-store, and in walks Joe Strummer and the Clash, and they walked straight up to Joe and said, "We're big fans of your music. We want you to tour with us." And I frankly, I'd never heard of them. I hate to admit that, but
that's all right. I mean, come on.
But man, it turned into this amazing experience to do these Clash gigs.
Yeah, like worlds collide, but they make sense somehow.
There's a whole. I mean, I could spend way too much time talking about that, but anyway, it was a great experience. And Joe Strummer, I mean, everybody thought these guys were a bunch of druggies, and they were kind of perceived as these wild, caution to the wind. Well, they were caution to the wind, but these guys, the Clash, were extremely serious about their music. I mean, there was no BS. I think the fans were kind of depicted what people thought the Clash were, but the Clash were great players, and they made a huge difference in the music scene for a long time.
Yeah, well, David Grissom and I, just to mention another friend, were talking about that the other day, about how people kind of have a story in their head of the person that's on stage. And there were a lot of bands that were really serious about their craft that had a different interpretation and that kind of thing. But I wanted to ask right quick about, for me, honestly, one of the greatest people I've worked with is Joe Ely, and it was because I remember one time, one of the greatest lessons I learned is we came to Tulsa to play a gig, and it was obviously a booking coup, because it was like Ray used to call it, because it was like 10 people showed up. So somebody messed up, because Joe used to always, we always sold out if we were going to go to someplace like Tulsa.
Right.
So we show up and there's 10 people. Joe played like it was frickin' Carnegie Hall.
Oh, listen,
and he commanded the stage and it was just this lesson. And then we got done and we got out of there and we went back on the road and it was like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
And it was such a great lesson for me because he's such a professional and commands the stage no matter what.
Listen, I totally agree. And I've told many people this. Joe, I can't even say how many gigs I did with him. I had like 2,000-3,000 gigs. We toured Europe 3 or 4 times, played all across the country. Joe, I never witnessed Joe Ely giving any less than 110% every show. And also, a lot of people thought Joe was into doing chemicals and stuff like that.
Right.
Couldn't be further from the truth. He was totally serious about his music. He didn't let any of that stuff get in his way. He'd drink a little wine, drink a little beer every now and then, but he never performed in any kind of enhanced state. It was like,
right.
Man, it was just straight from the heart, and he could burn it down. In fact, when we had
intensity.
When we had the full Joe Ely band, which was myself, Jesse Taylor on guitar, Ponty Bone, Greg Wright, and Steve Keaton on drums. Anytime we would play a festival, nobody wanted to follow us.
Yeah.
What are
you going to do after that, right?
I know. I remember one time we played the Roxy in L.A.
Yeah.
And it's when the Byrds, the band the Byrds had split up, and I can't even think of their names, but 2 of the Byrds started their own thing. And so we played the Roxy, kind of a double bill thing, Joe Ely band, and then I can't think what these guys' names were, but anyway, they were way more famous than we were.
Yeah.
And so the club owner had Joe Ely playing last, just by chance. I don't know why, and so this other band just raised hell. They didn't want to appear that they were opening for us.
Yeah.
So they went to Joe, and Joe said, "Heck, we don't care. We don't care when we play."
Of course he did. Of course Joe did.
Yeah. He said it's fine. We play
just
whenever.
It's cool. Yeah.
So that we played first. They played second. The next night we show up, and the club owner says, "Oh, by the way, these guys want to play first tonight." Yeah. So Joe said, "Fine, we'll play wherever."
Yeah, I'm not.
And it's because Joe burned it down every night. Every show. It was like playing with a huge rock band, although we had accordion and pedal steel.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, if we're getting close to the end of the hour, it's gone really fast. Everybody, if this is your first time on, this is 20 Question Tuesdays. Thanks to Austin Music TV.
Now, let me ask you: do you need to finish more questions? Because if you want to do some quick fire questions just to get them in, I know we haven't done 20.
Oh, it's funny because Ray Wiley was on. He goes, "Jeff, I don't think that was 20. It's just a good name." It's just an alliterative name. But I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll stay on online for just a couple of minutes for everybody to make sure we got through all of them. We've gotten through most of them. And but I want to make sure that I just mentioned a couple of things. Once again, the way to find out about Lloyd is right here. Here is his website, lloydmains.com, and I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody as well. Lloyd Mains.com. Sorry, I'm a little technically whatever. And then also, of course, you're doing the live streams once a month with Terry Hendricks. That's at
Yep.
terryhendricks.com. Everybody, thanks so much for the tips. Basically, all I do is I split the tips with my guest. It keeps the wheels rolling, and like I like to think like, hey, at the end of this, I get a nice meal for or a nice bag of groceries or a half tank of gas or whatever we get. So thank you everybody for keeping the show going that way.
I just passed my tips on to Bubba's buddies.
There you go. That's perfect. That's perfect. For me, it's about the dogs. We joke and say,
oh, yeah.
It's a lot of salmon cookies up here is what they like. So as we're going off, because we might go off on air during the middle of this question, but I only ask one question every week, Mr. Mains, that is like my question that I love to ask. I love to ask people, and we're trying to figure out a different way to say this because a lot of people take issue with the way I say the question. And the question is, what is your guilty pleasure music? And most people have come back at like, well, I'm not guilty even though I like this. But my point in asking the question is, everybody I have on here is hip to something that I'm not hip to, And what I love about it is, somebody will come on and they'll say something funny like, some gal will say, I'm into this or that, or I'm into the Spice Girls, or I'm into this, or, the joke was because when I started on one of the first shows, somebody found out that I was a Fanalo, and that when I was a little kid, my mom used to play Barry Manilow records. And now I don't follow or anything like that, but if I hear Can't Smile Without You, I get a warm, fuzzy feeling, So I like to find out what you're something that people wouldn't expect that you listen to that you really dig.
Well, I really like, and I don't own that much of it, but anytime I can find a radio station, the kind of independent station that's playing Zydeco music, I love Zydeco music. Yeah.
Are there particular artists, or is it just kind of the whole genre?
Well, just kind of the whole genre. I mean, I like the traditional stuff with the T-fire and the rub board and the accordion. Yeah. But I'll tell you, there's an independent station in town. I don't know if is it okay to list?
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah,
we'll just mention it.
It's called Co-op Radio.
Yeah.
Which I love that station, and they have a Zydeco show. I think it's every Wednesday morning, and they play every type of Zydeco there is. There's a lot of Zydeco that sounds a little bit country. In fact, there are some Zydeco steel players that are fantastic. Yeah. But there's also. Do they
generally play on pedals, or do they generally play
on pedals? Pedals.
No kidding,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Wow, I got to check that out.
Yeah. It's wild stuff, and then they also there's like this kind of Louisiana funk, similar to
that stuff.
The brothers. What are the Neville brothers? Brothers.
Yeah. Meters. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. I just like that entire the entire genre, from the funky Zydeco to the traditional
early Tipitina's kind of gigs.
Yeah.
Like back in the day when they were playing. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I played Tipitina's many times with Joe Ely and with Jerry Jeff Walker.
Now, are you buds with our friend Malcolm Papa Malley? Do you know Papa Malley very well? He's back in New Orleans, and man, he is gigging like crazy. So the last time we were there, I hung out with Papa Malley, and this is just crazy, man. It happened during Folk Alliance. Papa Malley pulls up to Folk Alliance to grab me and Scrappy Judd in this station wagon, and Peter Rowan is in the front. And so me and Scrappy and Papa Malley and Peter Rowan are there, and Steve Poltz walks outside. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're going to get trout po' boys." And he says, "Trout po' boys? Man, I want to do that." And I was like, "Well, I don't know if we have room, because we're just in this tiny little station wagon." So we all just jammed in and drove like 40 minutes. And the stories that went on in that car were just, man, it was hilarious. Well, that's really cool. Okay, so go ahead.
I met Papa Malley a couple of times. I thought he was one funky music dude, man. He was fantastic. I'm sure he still is.
Too.
Another friend of mine moved to New Orleans, Mark Rubin. You remember Mark
Oh
Rubin?
yeah, Mark, yeah, he just put out an album recently too. I
Oh,
need to get him back
fantastic!
on
Because I was lucky enough to get to produce 3 or 4 Bad Livers records,
there.
and
Yeah,
well, those guys were
phenomenal
amazing.
musicians,
Oh
man.
yeah, yeah.
And great stuff. Okay, so a couple of people asked a couple questions. We're off the radio station, or